Welcome to Lofty Pursuits and Public Displays of Confection in Tallahasseee, Florida. I'm Greg, and today we're going to travel with Greg and cross the country. We crossed the country because of a comment made in one of our videos, video number 93 on the Blue Hearts, about mushroom-flavored candy, and it drove me crazy about what candied mushrooms were like. And if I did figure out how to make them, could I make them taste good? So I had to travel to find out. I've done a few of these travels with Greg videos where I travel across the country, usually to learn from other candy makers. So let's travel with Greg and go back to episode number 93. Brussels sprouts are better. Don't you think a Brussels sprout candy would go over great with my audience on YouTube? No, you think the fact that I made raspberry is better? I thought it would be funny to convince her that the candy was Brussels sprout flavor and not, well, raspberry flavor. And I was going on and told her about the pickled flavored candy we really made. And then I decided to ask her what she thought about the possibility of mushroom-flavored candy. You think you'd like mushroom candy? No? What's wrong with mushroom? You do? What did she say? Let's freeze here for a moment and go back and listen to that again.
Brew my own shiitakes and make it.
How do you make candy out of shiitakes? In all seriousness. Wait, there's a type of candy I've never heard of? One that she wouldn't tell me about before she left? And here I am. Confused. I'm looking online, I'm looking in old books, calling up old candy makers. Nobody has heard of somebody candying mushrooms before. But I did find the Fungus Fair. It's held once a year. It was going to take place just a few days later in Santa Cruz, California. This is where serendipity fits into things. I had tickets to land in San Jose, 38 minutes from Santa Cruz, on the morning of this event. And I had nothing planned the rest of the day. I was flying out for my best friend's birthday, and I was going to be there anyway. So I packed my bags and added some video cameras, and I planned to be amused at the Fungus Fair. I love to go to museums and strange events like this, or events that I think are going to be strange before I get there. I have this preconceived notion that I'm going to be entertained by the event itself and its strangeness, but more times than not, I leave finding that it was fascinating and that I want to go back. I went to the Barbie Hall of Fame once expecting it to be a joke. And it wasn't a joke. It was a museum on how perceptions of fashion by children develop through the ages. And I went to the Fungus Fair expecting, well, not really sure what I was going to expect. But I walked in the door and I discovered mushrooms as far as the eye can see. And who knew that this would lead to a year and a half's worth of experiments and development in making a unique candy the world has never seen before. But in the meantime, the colors were like a pointillist stream in organic material. And it had to leave you wondering, how are all these gathered, as most of these mushrooms only survive a day or two after they're picked?
We started with 186 at the beginning of yesterday, and people are bringing in mushrooms to be identified, and so we found, 20 additional species. They're all local, all probably within 50 miles of here.
Oh, we've had over
300.
We've hunted up to 300 at some fairs. The weather has gotten very strange in the last few years.
Yeah. It's different visiting an event like this if you're documenting it. Because you don't just explore the event. The first thing you have to do is meet the organizer.
I'm Les Seltzer. I'm the co-chair of the fair, along with Phil Carpenter, who's our head scientist, and my wife Renee, who puts together all the programs and speakers and chefs and things like that. So,
hey, good talking to you.
And we've done, and the fair's on its 45th year, and we just have a great time.
Because I never know what to expect, you know.
But now you've seen the best.
Oh, of course I've seen it. I used to say I'm filled to the gills with mushrooms. I know immediately this is a man after my own heart.
When it rains, it spores. That's one of our gigs. The other one was we put the fun in fungus.
The event seems to have 6 major parts. A food area where you can buy food made from mushrooms, of course. The mushroom display that we showed you earlier. 2 rooms that were dedicated to vending of various types. A crafts and hands-on room. And then a lecture hall. And of course there's mushroom art everywhere.
But you're getting a laugh. I can give you groans if you'd like.
So do you want to take me somewhere?
Yeah, I'm going to take you to Debbie, who's a candy maker.
Oh, wow.
mushroom dyeing.
Mushroom dyeing?
Yeah. So dyes.
Changing the color of the mushroom or changing the color of cloth?
Right, dyes made from mushroom. Debbie.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Greg.
Hi, Greg.
The candy guy.
Oh, I'm a confectioner as well.
Okay,
I'm a chocolatier.
Much lower temperature.
Yes, quite.
So.
Yes. No, we're making a tea, a very strong tea of the mushrooms, and then we're dyeing silk at about 160 degrees in the crock pot for about 5 minutes, and we put little different tie-dye rubber bands and clamps. Of course, absolutely. And kids of all ages make amazing stuff here. So we just have fun. It's what?
This is what I love about events like this. They lead me down all sorts of rabbit holes. I discovered that there were about 20 different varieties of mushrooms that can dye things. Unfortunately, I also discovered that most of them are not edible, so I can't use them for dyeing candy. But this is why you go to an event like this.
I don't know if Fred's here, so.
Fred's right here.
Oh, there's the other
Fred's here.
There's the other candy guy.
He's a confectioner.
I make hard candy. First, I need to learn which mushrooms to use. I want to use chanterelles because they grow locally in Tallahassee. But the experts have other ideas.
I want to see if I can make a mushroom-flavored hard candy, either starting with a mushroom
Candy
that I can get. If we can figure out how to do it with chanterelles, I can get so many chanterelles out of my front yard.
No, the flavor is not going to do
And I don't think that would be
You want candy
stable
caps.
either.
You want
candy caps.
You want to use candy
Because
caps.
you can dry them. You have to dry them to get the flavor.
Well, chanterelles no, candy caps yes. They're in the milk cap family. They're a mushroom native to California and the West Coast, and I've never seen one before. And they're a little odd to work with, but they have a wonderful flavor.
But you probably last forever.
Chemistry behind that?
He's a chemist. Ask.
I know that if you put candy caps through a still, they hydrolyze and you don't have any flavor.
Because I would think that a dry powder would not go well with in a hard candy.
Actually, it works fine. We do it essentially. That's why we put the
Oh, okay.
You can probably extract the flavor somehow.
theoretically steam distill it. There's lots of other techniques.
Don't distill it. Simple syrup, filter, you're there.
My question is, can the flavor take the heat I need to take it?
Let us know.
I would think so. I mean,
Let us know, Greg.
it works in cookies.
Well, it sounds like steam distilling is out. That's how we get flavors like peppermint oil and orange oil and even our lavender. But some sort of hydration extraction might work, like they made simple syrups with. So we've learned a couple of things. It also seems to be heat stable. We're getting there. We're not there yet. We got the mushroom and we got 2 techniques, but I don't understand why the flavor transfers the way it does. They also talk about using the dried mushroom. Nobody seems to use this mushroom fresh. Questions just bring us more questions. This is a great event. And while I spent a lot of the event finding empty places to interview people with, this place is packed. It's packed from gills to gills with people going from one room to the other. I think what surprised me the most is the level of energy in the room. I didn't think a mushroom festival would be exciting.
Well, we generally have about 3,000 paid for the weekend. And then kids under 12 are free, so we have no idea.
Everywhere you look in the hall, somebody is walking around with an ice cream cone. You can even see this in the videos if you scroll back. And the ice cream cones are candy cap mushroom ice cream. And I realize at this point I now know what mushroom I'm going to use, but I don't know what it tastes like. And since the flavor isn't complete until it's cooked, I better go try some that somebody's cooked. I thought I'd start with the ice cream, but the lines were really, really long. So I cornered somebody who had some and asked him what he thought. So tell me, you got some candy cap ice cream.
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's really tasty. It's earthy, it's umami, it's sweet. You know, it's all I ever wanted from candy cap ice cream. So.
I guess if you ask a teenager, you get what you get. So let's ask somebody that's working at the ice cream booth.
So what do you think about the candy cap mushroom?
I think it's good. I'm not a huge fan of mushrooms, but it's got a really sweet maple flavor. It's a little earthy too at the same time.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And what's the name of your ice cream shop?
It's the Penny Ice Creamery. We are local to Santa Cruz. We've been open for about 8 years.
Sadly, my camera wasn't working perfectly for the whole show. I missed the shot of me tasting the ice cream. But it was delicious, and it did taste like maple. I didn't get the earthy undertones. And it was a smooth, wonderful maple-flavored ice cream. but it was flavored with mushrooms.
And bomboloni are like Italian-style donuts, specifically from northern Italy, and they're kind of served as more like a festival food, so it's more like a street food, like a Tuscan-style street food, rather than like an actual donut. Yeah, so we are using candy cap mushroom custard. They're really sweet. They taste like maple syrup or like butterscotch.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, I'm going to take one of, well, you know which one I want.
One of these?
Yeah, of course, the mushroom one. I've got one of these candy cap mushroom donuts. Let's see how it tastes. Does taste like maple syrup. It's sweet, it's satisfying. It's a really good pastry too. This is an excellent thing. This could work. This could work.
So you're with the Fungus Federation of Santa Cruz, and that seems to make you a little bit different than the other cooks that are experimenting with it for the event.
That's true.
But you seem to really know your funguses. And you made some beautiful cookies with candy cap mushrooms in it. Could you tell me about cooking with the candy cap mushrooms?
Sure. Now the candy cap, when you dry it, it has a chemical in it that changes into the maple syrup profile. And until you really dry it, it doesn't. If you get it fresh, it doesn't have that really pronounced maple syrup flavor.
Does it lose any flavor when you bake it? Because
not at all. And that's the nice thing. That molecule really stays intact. In fact, it's kind of like eating garlic. You know, the next day you're kind of blooming garlic through your pores. Well, when you eat candy caps, you bloom, but it's kind of butterscotch smelling. You know, it's very nice actually, but it definitely comes right out after about 2 hours of eating it.
So I'm here with one of these candy cap mushroom cookies, and this thing looks great. It's soft, once again mapley. Really, really very good.
And now it's time for the mushroom warning. There seem to be more varieties of deadly or poisonous mushrooms than there are sweet and good-tasting mushrooms. The people who are picking these mushrooms are trained. Many of them are mycologists. In other words, they went to school for this. There are specialists in every field, and find a specialist before you go and pick wild mushrooms. There were warning signs all over the hall, and I thought I'd share one with you. Now to hunt for somebody who hunts for mushrooms. And I go into the dealer's room, and there's this wonderful lady with this wonderful mushroom hat. I guess since it's a mushroom, that would be a cap, not a hat. Anyway, I find Todd from King of Mushrooms, a mushroom hunting firm, and he tells me about candy caps.
So mostly you see candy caps dried. Very seldom do you see them fresh because they're so fragile.
But I hear they don't taste as good fresh.
Hence the name. They taste good fresh, but they're not as intense fresh because when you dry mushrooms, it's normally a 10-to-1, but with candy caps, it's a 15-to-1. Yeah, it takes almost 15 pounds fresh to make 1 pound dried. So they're like the saffron of the mushroom world. They're very expensive dried, but they're very intense dried. So you can see the gills underneath, and that's a classic candy cap. Lactarius fragilis. Fragilis meaning very fragile, you know? And smell. Too bad you can't video the smell.
And we have one last expert to talk to, the man who wrote the book on cooking with wild mushrooms.
So, hi, my name is Chad Hyatt. I'm a chef who also happens to be a obsessed mushroom hunter. And this book is the culmination of my two obsessions of food and mushrooms. And it's called The Mushroom Hunter's Kitchen.
How do you candy a mushroom? Can you do it with any mushroom, or can you only do it with chanterelle?
Oh no, you can do it with a lot of different mushrooms. Some of them you get better results than others, but so
candying like you candy a flower, not candying like you're making a lollipop.
Yes, exactly. When I say candy, what I mean by that is I'm talking about basically cooking it down in a sugar syrup, and so the syrup basically penetrates the mushroom entirely, and the aroma and flavor of the mushroom gets into the syrup both. the chemical that gives it that maple aroma very much needs moisture. So water is your friend. Like Candy Cap makes really nice syrups because, and it would be interesting to and a little bit goes a long way actually. If you have good candy caps, you don't need very much to flavor a good amount of stuff. So, and I just wonder if you dehydrate it completely, does the candy have any moisture in it at all?
Less than half.
So I wonder if some of it would be interesting to see. You'll have to play with it a little and see.
But the candy dissolves in your mouth.
Right, that's what I was going to say. So the moisture in your mouth will bring it back.
So one of the things I do, I make this champagne candy I made this year. I put baking soda and acid in after all the moisture is removed. So when it hits your mouth, you get the elementary school volcano effect.
Yeah.
And it bubbles in your mouth, so I've actually carbonated a hard candy.
That's really cool. The natural chemical in candy caps is the artificial chemical in artificial maple syrup flavor. That is the chemical. And so I can't remember the name of it. I can pull my phone out and look it up. But that's the name of that's the chemical. So that sweet flavor is really the sweet aroma. And there is a component to them. If the danger you get when you use a lot of candy caps is they still have like some mushroomy, like kind of what we think of as a mushroomy flavor, that really strong umami kind of thing. So if you use a lot of candy caps, you'll start getting some of that in there too. And when you use candy caps fresh, you get much more of that umami and less of that sweet aroma.
It's been a long day, and I have one more tasting to do before I leave the Fungus Fair.
And now, mushroom lasagna. I know it's not candy, but never had lunch. And, when you're at a mushroom fest, you do like in Rome. That's delicious. This event is amazing. I really came here with no expectations of it being spectacular. An event that's been run for over 40 years. They obviously know what they're doing, and it's obviously, both fun and delicious.
So what did I learn? I learned that candy cap mushrooms are the way to go. I learned that they're concentrated by drying, so the flavor is very concentrated. I learned that the flavor is transmitted to you mostly through water. Although it is fat soluble, it's got to be in a suspension of something else. I learned the people at this festival are wonderful people. And I learned that they never once mentioned anything about Super Mario Brothers. And I learned that there's much more I need to learn about mushrooms in my life. And I probably will over time, but I think I got the candy under control. This may have taken over 18 months from start to finish, but this is the type of project I love, where I get to travel, meet people, learn new things, and then go back to the kitchen and figure out how to turn it into reality. While the mushrooms are very light, they're also very irregularly shaped. And the only way to get accurate measurement is by weight. And we take the weighed mushrooms and we put it in a coffee grinder to reduce it to a powder. Another thing I learned at the Fungus Fair. To get the flavor out of the mushrooms, we're going to make a tea. We're going to take the ground mushrooms and put it in boiling water and let it steep for quite a while to get all the flavor out. But then we're going to use a technique like barley candy. Barley candy is a traditional candy of Pennsylvania, and it is made by using barley that has been boiled in water, and they don't use the barley itself, they use the water that now has glucose in it. Instead of using glucose, we have mushroom flavored or maple flavored or candy flavored water. And that we mix in with the sugar. So we're going to replace the water we normally use to make the candy with the mushroom water solution. My apprentice Bernard will cook this to 310 degrees, and we're going to put it on the candy cooling table to cool down. I think the color of the mushrooms itself and little flakes of mushrooms that have been cooked into the candy give it this wonderful color. So no food coloring is going to be added to this. But it's still going to cool on the candy cooling table, and as it cools, we have to flip it around. We do this with a spatula, and the object is to even out the temperature. We want to get it all to be the same temperature. We don't want bits harder and cracky, soft and drippy. We need it all the same consistency, so it can go through our press, and it can hold its shape. We're trying to get the sugar to go through several states. The first state is a hot, very liquid point. It'll then cool down to be a liquidy, non-Newtonian fluid, which means under pressure it's going to behave like a solid. But we want it to be a thick, almost silly putty-like consistency. To do that, we have to let it cool to the point it's like a clay. but it's still going to behave like a liquid until it hits the rollers. The rollers do the final cooling, bringing it back to a solid state. And that's the state we eat it at. If you want to try this candy for yourself, you can get it at our website, www.pd.net. We also have a Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter, and you can always listen to our podcast. We do a weekly podcast that's called Lofty Pursuits, wherever podcasts can be found. This and other projects like this travel are supported by our wonderful Patreon subscribers. And if you'd like to support it too, go to Patreon and look up Lofty Pursuits. Let me thank our Patreon subscribers who let us make projects like the podcast. And of course, this mushroom candy video. Our press was made in the late 1800s by the Thomas Mills Corporation. It's cast iron and it's brass. And these things are just really good to use, but they're actually deceptively hard to use. Bernard has been mastering its use over some time. This is the first video showing him in action. And if you get this candy cap candy, it was probably made by him, as he's made most of it so far. This type of candy are called drops. The machine is actually called a fruit drop roller. And if you've ever wondered why they call these candies drops, just listen and watch. Now let's look at the candy, and doesn't it look good? The flavor is throughout the candy because of the steeping process we did early on. But the actual little bits of color, that's the mushrooms itself trapped in sugar. Sort of like amber. And they're so good, giving a great flavor that could be described as maple syrup or as butterscotch or as caramel. And it seems to be different for everyone who tries it. So if you've tried it, you probably should tell us in the comments what you think, because I'm finding it interesting that it's a little different for everybody. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please subscribe to us here on YouTube and ring that bell. I'd like to thank the Fungus Federation of Santa Cruz and the Fungus Fest for opening their doors and making me feel so welcome. Thank you so much for teaching me so much about mushrooms and letting me make this candy, because I couldn't have done it without you. And thanks to all of you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.